The new US ambassador to South Africa has finally arrived, and the ANC's reaction is quite a surprising one. In fact, it could mean that relations between the two countries could shift fundamentally. Let's get into this groundbreaking story. Brent Bozell, the new US ambassador to South Africa, finally arrived in the country after a very lengthy wait. And while he is viewed as a somewhat controversial figure, for many people he's viewed as a very positive figure, and for others as very polarizing, South Africa gave quite an interesting response to his arrival, which could signal the fundamental change in US-South African relations going forward. But before I get into the story, could I please remind you to subscribe to the channel? It's entirely free, and all you have to do is click on the subscribe button below the video. Furthermore, consider becoming a Power Club member in order to enjoy some additional perks and support the channel. You can do so by clicking on the join button below. Now let's get started. So, as initially reported by Reuters, US President Donald Trump's pick for ambassador to South Africa, conservative activist and writer Brent Bozell III, has arrived in the country where he will seek to improve fraught ties between the two states. An embassy official told Reuters on Monday that Bozell had arrived. He is expected to present his credentials to President Cyril Ramaphosa before officially taking up his post. Relations between Washington and Pretoria have deteriorated in the last year as Trump has accused South Africa of persecuting its white minority, criticized its ties with Russia and China, imposed steep tariffs on its exports, and cut all aid. South Africa has not had an ambassador in Washington since the Trump administration expelled its last one, Ibrahim Rasool. And so what's actually happened is quite interesting, because even though a lot of South Africans, specifically the ANC supporters, view Bozell as a very conflicting figure, given how different his ideology is to theirs, the South Africans haven't actually put up much of a protest against him. And this is very interesting. You see, a couple of weeks ago, South Africa decided to declare the Israeli charge d'affaires, which is the top diplomat in the country, as a persona non grata, which gave him only 72 hours to leave the country. Now, according to the Vienna Convention on Diplomatic Relations of 1961, which I have open right in front of us here, South Africa actually has every right to declare Bozell a persona non grata as well, and they can do so without actually giving a specific reason. And we can see that right here in Article 9, which I have highlighted. But what's really important for us to understand is that even though it's been a few days since Bozell arrived in the country, nothing has been done. And it seems as if his swearing in as the new ambassador to South Africa will go ahead. And this is quite surprising, because if we go into what Bozell's agenda is, it very much is something that the ANC will view with fear. So let's watch this video that is of Bozell during his confirmation hearing while in the US, just to get an idea of what he hopes to achieve in South Africa.
If confirmed, I will approach my ambassadorship with respect for the South African people.
After President Trump nominated Bozell in March, the conservative activist, writer, and liberal media critic finally had his day before a committee that will play a pivotal role on his pathway to confirmation before the entire Senate.
I come before you at a challenging moment for U.S.-South Africa relations. The president has expressed serious concerns about South Africa that for too long have been unaddressed. When people and businesses in South Africa believe their private property rights are at risk, when many South Africans feel unsafe in their homes, when rampant corruption and unfair business practices hold back the South African economy, and when South African politicians greet as friends those who seek to destabilize the world's peace and security, then common ground between our two countries feels harder to find.
Bozell named a number of key priorities once confirmed, including objecting to what he called South Africa's drift towards China, Russia, and Iran, advancing President Trump's resettlement invitation to Afrikaners, pressing the government to rescind support for the expropriation of private property without compensation, advocating for business interests by promoting fair trade practices and reducing barriers, and pressing South Africa to end its ICJ case against Israel.
So this is very interesting because what we see here is similarly to Trump's priorities that were expressed to previous South African delegations in Washington. Bozell really hasn't drifted at all away from this agenda. We see here how the Afrikaner refugees are still going to be safeguarded. Expropriation without compensation is going to be combated. He's going to look to reduce trade barriers. And he did actually mention in his street unfair practices, which could be referring to BEE and other sorts of similar legislation. And then the press to end the ICJ proceedings against Israel. And so the fact that South Africa hasn't yet acted against him could be a good sign. It could mean that South Africa is perhaps open to dealing with the US and finding a compromise, although many will believe that's unlikely. But it could also mean that the ANC in particular realize that they are in too deep, and that if they do alienate the United States any further, it could have severe repercussions both for themselves and the country. And so while we're all yet to see all of this play out, it could indeed be a very positive development. Here is somebody who is staunchly in Trump's camp and looking to combat a lot of the ANC destructiveness that we've seen on the world stage, as well as domestically. And ultimately, if he is able to advance his agenda in any way, shape, or form, it can only be positive for South Africa as it looks to restore its international standing despite the ANC's destructive policies. Thank you very much for tuning into this video. If you found it interesting, please remember to subscribe to the channel for more content. Until next time, I'm Matthew Cohen, and this is the Power Pod.